All right, so I have the questions here. I want to get started. So I think first off, why are we here? So we're here because you, yeah. I asked myself this
Exactly.
thing this
What am I
morning,
doing?
like, what am I doing here? And so you're releasing this. Tell me about this pack that's probably about to be released soon at the time of this video, but it's gonna probably be out when people in the future. People from the future are gonna see this video, and
When people of the future come and look at this video and go, what were they talking about? Yeah, so Humankind, it started off back in 2013, I think it was. I released little sound sets for Massive, Absinthe, Omnisphere, and Trillion. And the idea was just to put something back, basically. I've been very lucky enough to be able to become a synth programmer as a career, which seems ridiculous, really. And so I did this little collection of 4 sound sets to raise some money for charity. And at that time, it was for Oxfam. And it was popular, and it went down really well. And then 2 or 3 years afterwards, I decided to re-release it, because at the time it was only released for a month, so it was limited edition. Once it had gone, you couldn't buy it again. So I re-released it because people were asking for it to be released, and when I did 4 more sound sets for Bazille, Diva, Zebra 2, and Zebra HZ, the Dark Zebra. And again, it went really well, very popular, raised lots more money. And then I've had a bit of clamoring, particularly for the Dark Zebra version of Humankind to be re-released, because it got used. There's a sound on it that got used in the Apex Legends soundtrack by my friend Stephen Barton. And so I thought, shall I release it again? And I thought I wanted to do something to raise a bit of money again, because obviously strange things are happening in the world at the moment. And so I thought I'd have a 3rd release of Humankind, and I thought I'd do 4 new sound sets again, just to make it different, because some people have already bought the existing 8 sound sets, and I don't want them to have nothing to have. So I've done 4 new sound sets for Repro 1, Repro 5, Uno LX, and The Legend. And again, that's raising money, but for this time, instead of Oxfam, I'm going to be raising money for a UK charity called the Trussell Trust, who basically run a number of food banks across the UK, making sure that people who are really vulnerable or just struggling with poverty are able to have food to put on the table for them and their kids, and to have basic household items, cleaning products, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Things people need, particularly in a crisis like the one we're going through at the moment. So that's the concept.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing what you're doing, because I'm seeing all over the world that because of the times we're in, there's a lot of talk, and obviously positive, also negative, but criticism to the top levels of governments and society and stuff. But there's an amazing light coming from. So if we were to be super skeptical or critical, I would say not criticizing too much, but there's definitely lack of trust from past years, and there's a lot of bad light that the politics have been put into because of how they behave. It's not we're waking up and saying bad things. It's like it's a flow of things. But if you look just right under that, there's like a lot of people, like organizations which obviously are not the government, but they're doing so much, and that's real people. That's I mean, even politicians are real people, but sometimes there's this mistrust, right, from the years and stuff. These are actually even more real people, I would say, like realer people, and they're going through everything. Like there's medics and doctors, and there's people serving food to like homeless people or people who are weaker. Or I see it here in Berlin as well. it's just an explosion of ads of younger people in Berlin that are just putting themselves out for free. Like, I can go buy you stuff and leave it at the door at this zip code, and the other guy does the other zip code. And there's plenty. I find it's going to be very hard for somebody to not get help from a stranger, because that's only the eBay ads that we have here in Berlin. There's going to be maybe other sites where you can also do it. So it's just a glimpse of what people are doing. And everything summed up in a week or so, I really noticed there's a lot of help going on. And I think initially maybe some people took it a little bit too easy and said like, well, it's just it's this thing, it spreads, but it doesn't have, if you're not weak. But then people started realizing, well, I'm putting other people in danger just because of how I'm behaving. And so it kind of reversed, and people said like, what, I could help because I'm kind of healthier maybe than the guy who's 96 years old and has nephews can't travel now and meet them and visit them, so I could do that. And so that's a very good thing, because it always helps. But in times like this, I think that there's no better reason. I mean, it's clearly going from point A, like whoever buys the pack, which is also gonna use it. So it's not just, they're not just giving the money away, which you can obviously do. You're getting an amazing sound pack, and you're also helping these. So it's very hard to not get into it, I'd say, because
well, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. I heard the sounds and are like off the charts. So typical the unfinished work. Because if people don't know this guy, the one who's on the left of the screen right now, not the one on the right. The one on the right you can live without. But if you're making sounds and if you're using synthesizers or virtual instruments and stuff, and you have no idea who this guy is, you're in luck, because now you can fix this issue in the best of it's time to fix it. Matt has made so many amazing sounds for everybody, because you can go on his website and just get the sounds, and they're absolutely non-expensive compared to the time that I think everybody knows. If you started patching things with the synthesizers, even one that you really know well, you hit that spot where you're like, okay, now I'm kind of fast, but now I can't really make a sound that sounds like the other sound that sounds like the other sound, like, or you got something from somebody that is a request. And there's a lot of elements that come back in and make a synthesizer that you really know well be something, again, time consuming because of the task that there's at hand. So there's a knowledge of synthesis, the knowledge of a specific virtual instrument or real instrument you're working on. And then there's the demand of somebody commissioning or asking you for a specific type of palette, for example, for, I don't know, movie or something like that, which is interesting. So it multiplies. So the time you need for doing that, no matter how fast you are, and then even if you're fast, it's because of talent or good ears, experience and stuff. So it's not that because you're fast, so he makes them fast.
Yeah.
So they're amazing sounds, and there's for like you're not single-sided, you're not a one-trick pony. There's a lot of different colors that might go for very, very, very different genres, which is refreshing to see like you've been doing that. So the first question I had for you, which is obvious, is like, why the unfinished? What does it mean?
Basically, it's a kind of sarcastic joke against myself. I came to doing PC-based music and sound design and stuff quite late on, when I was about 31, 32 maybe. Before that, I'd done various different things. I spent about a decade trying to have a comedy career, both as a writer and a performer, and started so many projects that never came to anything, or I never followed through on. I never really worked hard enough on them to really be successful. So essentially, the unfinished is a constant reminder to actually finish things. Because previously I hadn't been very good at finishing projects and getting out there and showcasing my stuff and speaking to people about things and basically putting enough effort in, really.
Mm-hmm. Well,
that's where the name came from.
That's the stuff about the sound is definitely finished, but I got this. I mean, it's out there. It's established and works. And there's a lot of people. I was talking with people that do hair, and I was like, I'm doing this interview with Matt. I was like, oh man, he's awesome. His sound design. So word is out there. It is sounds to me not finished in the sense that like it's there, it's established. So it's definitely something that it's not finished because it's gonna keep doing that, but
well, yes, I'll have to
a stage where nothing really is right. When you do music and stuff, you have to let go. I think in sound design it's also the same thing. Like, do you want to tweak this envelope more? No, it's done. Like, so you said a little bit about your story background, which was the second thing I wanted to ask you. Like, how did you get to? You kind of said that as well, but how did you get to be involved with synthesizers? Like, were you playing synths since you were a kid, or whatever? Like, creating synth patches is kind of peculiar. Like, it's like a specific.
It's a very peculiar thing to be doing for a living. That's for sure. I mean, I've always been interested in making music and stuff. I think my 13th birthday, I got a Yamaha keyboard. In fact,
nice. Usually the best keyboards are the ones that are like nice. There are ones that are like on the shelves or disconnected and like put vertically on the wall.
This isn't the actual one that I got for my 13th birthday. It's the same model, but I actually picked this up off eBay about 6 months ago. It's a Yamaha PSR synth, but it's pretty basic. It sounds horrendous, but it's got this little synthesis section up here where you can do some very basic FM synthesis, which is quite fun.
Nice. Funny enough, my first keyboard was a Yamaha as well. They were so widespread, but it was more of a toy keyboard, and I've been fancying looking it up on eBay and like trying to get it. It was all the same thing because I think I sold it when I was like 15 or something, and it had like yellow pads, that you could do drums on. They still make those things around. When you go to like a mall or stuff, you can sometimes not the same model obviously, but the idea of having a little kid smash pads, like bright yellow green things. And
those things.
Nice. So talking about that, do you have a favorite hardware or favorite software, or one for each synthesizer? Would you say, do you
definitely have a favorite software synthesizer, which is Zebra.
Mm-hmm.
I can sit there for weeks playing with Zebra and not get even remotely bored. There's just limitless possibilities with it. But what I also like about it is if you want to do something really simple, it's really easy to do simple sounds as well. So it's got huge complexity to it, but at the same time, if you want to do simple stuff, it's actually pretty easy to do that as well. I find it very, very easy to navigate, and it sounds great.
Yeah,
that's all you need, really. Something that's easy to use and sounds fantastic is what you want.
I've only just scratched the surface of it. We did an event on it, and the more I was doing it, the more I was like, oh wow, like this could even do that. Like the modularity of how I do. And I think they called it Zebra because of like it looks like a zebra crossing. I think the middle matrix part. That's my idea. Like I woke up this morning, I was like, maybe that's why.
I can ask them, but I don't know that it's that.
I'm not even sure. Yeah, but I will ask them. Like,
are they called zebra crossings in Germany?
Mm-hmm. Well, are they like them? That's a weird. It's been a while since I got out of my house, so I don't know. They might have changed them. They're actually different because they don't have them here in Berlin. They have like some sort of white paint on the carb side, and it's on both sides, and that is just a meaning that would be where you cross. But there's actually no painting in the thing. I think maybe in some areas in the center they're more highlighted because of like denser traffic and stuff. There has to be. There might be white lanes sometimes. Yes, it's funny because it's the things you have under your eyes all the time. I'm sure initially we do. Initially there's like the more you can put signs of like please cross there. You have to do it because the population is more creative, so you have to force it in a way. It's like, dude, you have to use that part.
I'm not 100% sure this is the content people will be.
No, exactly. Exactly. Talking about Zebra. Also because it's funny, I don't really remember. But then I got Decent Light and like, let's got Zebra. So the Matrix that I was talking about, yeah, it's really, really, really amazing. Absolutely. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's
And it
great.
sounds great. And in hardware, do you would you have anything?
I mean, I don't particularly have any great favourites of hardware. I mean, of the synths that I do have, my favourite is probably my Juno 106. Not because it's a spectacular synth; it's quite simple sounding, really. But I don't know. There's just something about it. It's something I always craved when I first got into music. I really wanted a 106, and I don't even know why. Um, but I have one now, and it's
Mhm.
just a nice, simple synth to play. Probably my favourite synth to play at the moment is actually one that I haven't got set up at the moment, which is the Korg ARP Odyssey.
Oh.
Uh, that's really fun to play with. It's a slightly different type of synthesis. It's not well, not different synthesis, but the layout of the controls is a little bit unusual compared to most analog mono synths I've got. But yeah, it sounds really great. I really like that.
I heard that. Yeah, that they implemented like all three revisions like in one, so you can kind of change the filters, and so that adds a lot. You don't need to get scout for three vintage versions of it because previously you had to commit, right? You had to like, well, the three is great, but had I got the two, I could do these and that. But now you can just switch. Obviously, it's very convenient. Yeah. All right. So that's cool. I have to try that out. I've played the Korg version a little bit, but not
Mm.
that much too. But I know the Odyssey, and like it's odd when you first look at it and you're coming from a Moog maybe standpoint, and you look at it, you're like sliders.
Yeah.
All right, colors, and the colors you see, but you don't immediately recognize as. I mean, you probably get that there's a function to why they colored the little sliders, but
Mm.
if you go deeper into that, you go like, oh, all right, it's a roadmap of how some things, and it kind of helps, but it still remains a little bit of an odd synth sometimes. The duophonic behavior when you do sound design, it's beautiful. I think it's fantastic that you can do that, duophonic
Yeah.
sound. It's just so expressive, and but again, it does affect how your patch works. If you play mono and then you play duophonic. So if you're aiming for that feature, you gotta test it and hear it. And there's a lot of sliders, ring modulation, and yeah. But it
Mm.
definitely is fantastic synthesizers, and the fight is always up with against the Moog, like with funk bass. For example, there's people doing showcases of like this is the Moog, but this is the Odyssey, and they're definitely beautiful, beautiful. So, in DAW land, when you work in digital audio workstations and stuff, would you have? That's very geeky question, like because it doesn't really involve sound design, but is there a DAW that you work with better or whatever, whether it's
Um, well, it's quite a simple question to answer really, because I've only ever used Cubase. Right from when I started out, I think I started out on SX3, which is quite an old version now, and now it's probably on 10. Yeah, I learned how to use Cubase and never saw any reason to switch to another one. It does everything that I wanted to do. I know where to find things, and um, yeah, I think really with DAWs, it's a question of picking one that suits your workflow or just sticking with the one you start with. I can't imagine there's a great deal of difference between them in terms of audio quality or
yeah.
work. They're slightly different designs, and I think you just sort of mold yourself to the one you have, and that's it really.
Yeah.
I can't see any great benefit in shopping around when it comes to doors really.
Also, the adapting, like the time you spend adapting, or when you face something which the interface is completely different and the workflow is slightly different. It's so tough to just when you have that feeling where you're comfortable in one DAW. It's not that you don't want to learn. It's just it hurts sometimes. You have an idea in mind and you're facing all these interface things that is going to do something similar,
Yeah.
but it just looks completely overwhelming. You don't know where to just find a simple, MIDI velocity, I don't know, drawing or something. And then it's somewhere in there, but it just doesn't click in your brain. So there's people saying, there's different DAWs with different sounds. We don't want to go in there because it's like, the geeky magic that's, oh, well, Cubase sounds so and so, Logic sounds so. And usually people like me, they like slowly, go away and fade in the background and leave the talk be because it's.
I suspect people that think that don't actually ever finish making any music.
Yeah, exactly. Just do comparisons and exactly. Or
who is it that's going to listen to a track and know which DAW it was made on?
Exactly.
Find me that person.
Exactly. Absolutely right. 100% agreed. So you have, one looks at what you're doing and sees a lot of top producer brands, composers, in the testimonials and stuff. Then hears the sound and goes like, well, of course, because, they sound great. So how does somebody, without, letting away all the secrets of profession, the secrets of the trade, but how would, suppose that there's like a young sound designer, right, watching this, and there's friends I have that I know that would be, delighted to just be one day working with people, just for sound designing tasks. Like I make sounds. I have quite a few actually that were bass players or keyboard players or guitarists and stuff, and then they got into sound design, and they got pretty successful as well. So I think that would want me to ask such question, like how does one get to how could I phrase it? Because I also realize it's kind of weird, but how does one get to like propose himself or like be making, we reverse engineer the thing, like look at the result and just like, wow, Matt sounds are in all of this stuff, and then you play the sounds or you try them and you can really touch the value and the how would I say, like the high level of craftsmanship in there. And because if you try and make your own sounds, I think that's the first. I try and make my own sounds, it might sound good, but then there's a level of taste, of musicality in the stuff you make. So that speaks as to why composers might look at you for that. But from the outside, how would you tell a young sound designer to approach the field of like professional sound designing for composers?
So you mean if they want to work with composers making sounds for them?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, for me, it came from making my commercial sound sets, basically. So having decided that I was actually going to try and sell synth sounds, basically it's a matter of a famous composer will buy one of my sound sets maybe, or another composer will speak to another composer and tell them about my sound sets, and then someone will come along and just, I'll get an email saying, would you be interested in making some sounds for me on this project? So it's not something I have never, have I never done it? I have probably almost never approached a composer saying, can I make some sounds for you? It's always been a matter of them approaching me and asking me, and obviously that takes a long time before anyone does that, to a certain extent. I mean, I was actually quite lucky in that one games composer actually contacted me after I think my first or second sound set for Massive went out and asked me to do some sounds for a project they were working on for a computer game. I think that's probably very lucky and not typical. But then it was quite a long time before anyone else asked me to do it. So yeah, it's really a case of plug away, make good stuff, and eventually someone will come along and say, I like your good stuff, can you make me some special good stuff, basically. I think that's, I don't think if you particularly go sort of fishing around and emailing people and saying, I would like to make sounds for you, can I? I'm not convinced that's an approach that would work, to be honest. I think you need to be good at what you do, be someone that seems like they're good to work with, and at some point, if your sounds are good enough, someone will approach you and come along and ask you to make some sounds for them, I think.
Awesome. Yeah, I think in these times, especially where everybody's, sometimes overdoing, knocking at too many doors and sending too many emails, I think, the product out there. You said like I was lucky when that was one lucky thing that happened, but you were out there. The sounds were out there, which is something that a lot of people keep saying. Like, the sounds were there, the site was available. I had already done this, so you kind of yes. There's a luck factor, but you kind of bring it on yourself because you're there, you're ready for it, you make it sort of happen. And if that wouldn't have happened, probably something else would have, because the activity was there, the sound quality was there. So that's refreshing in simplicity when you have so many books that say how to send emails to people to get. Don't do that. Like just focus more on what.
Well, I've never done it, and I think
it's refreshing for me to hear that.
I don't think it's a very friendly way to do things. And I think one thing that is important about working with people is that you seem like someone that they would like to work with, because collaboration is very much a personal relationship as much as it is a creative and artistic relationship, and you want to work with people that you trust. That works both ways in that I get a lot of requests for bespoke work, and sometimes if I'm looking at the project and thinking, is this going to be fun to do, is this going to be a good working relationship, and if I'm not convinced it will be, I will back away from a job, because I want to work with people that I will enjoy working with more than I'm not necessarily there to work with the most famous or the most prestigious franchises, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
For me, doing this job, it's important that you enjoy it. Otherwise, you're not going to create good stuff. So I think that's a big consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And bombarding people with emails, frankly, is not the sign of a sane mind, or indeed someone that would be enjoyable to work with, if you ask me personally.
Yeah. Totally agreed. But let's put this out there. But I totally agree. So you said video games. Yeah, exactly, absolutely. But we just so happen to agree on this, so that's better.
Let's assume it's true.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Two people. That's all you need.
That's enough.
So you said video games, bro. That's one thing I wanted to ask you, just out of curiosity. Like it doesn't make much sense, but you're video gamer. You're more of a video game person, for music, movie person. Doesn't make any sense to ask this, because I'm a video game person. I'm also a movie person. It doesn't mutually exclude. But what's your background in games? Like, was it the
games? Well, I suppose I've always enjoyed playing computer games. I'm not tremendously good at a lot of them, so I'm not a hardcore gamer just because I'm too bad for it not to be completely and utterly frustrating to play them too regularly.
Mm-hmm.
I have been lucky to work on a few really good games franchises, like Call of Duty and the other one that I can never remember the name always escapes me when I think of it, when I work with Jason Graves, who's one of the loveliest composers in the world. God, what was that? I'm being so dense.
I don't want to start, naming a list, because that's like, this guy is a video gamer nerd. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I could start naming 100 video games.
Anyway, my brain's absolute scrambled eggs at the moment. So, so I like, one of the things I like about video games from a programming point of view is that there's a lot of music in video games, which means when someone approaches you to make some sounds for them, they're looking for quite a diverse palette. Because I think with video games, you cover quite often you cover a greater range of sort of emotional colors, because of the way that video game music is created, because it's you have to ramp up from sort of ambient background to, is there a threat, and then up to full-on combat kind of thing. So you're kind of creating on a number of levels, so that often makes working on video game projects quite interesting.
And from a composing standpoint, it's the same. Like movies, which have done like just a few things for shorts and stuff, they're more linear in a way, like when they have like, okay, so these starts, or either you do them in full abstract, like you put yourself out as an indie person and you say like, okay, I'm gonna write like 20 themes or stuff that can be snipped and stuff, and then we send them to directors to be placed temporarily. Like sometimes they're editing the stuff and they need some music just to see how things flow. They put your track underneath, and then if you're lucky enough, they say like, all right, call the guy whose track we put, here and there. Video games are more like thought out, like from before when you talk to the developers with people programming that, they might say like, okay, it's a dynamic environment, we need things to be this and that, and they gotta escalate to a more tense level and go back to ambient, or some people do it still the old school way, so each phase, each round has a specific music. But there's a very diverse set of information that comes from different developers, and that makes it interesting even from a composing standpoint. So it's sound wise also, there's patches that kind of do more of bringing out a character rather than another one. So the sounds kind of have a more recurring theme of like a leitmotif in sound design. Sometimes
you're often creating a sort of more of a sonic language for a video game than you are for film or TV. But there is, I think there are downsides with video game projects as well, which I've come across, which is the length of time they take is sometimes stunningly long. And start. So I've had composers approach me for sounds 2 or 3 years ago, and still the game isn't released, or is in a beta version, and
eternal alpha phases.
Some enthusiasm for it after that amount of time.
I've done stuff for some games that never came out because then the project was called, and so after a while I was like, man, is it me? Like, is it me that I'm breaking these relationships up? I can't date any video game. After our first dinner, we just don't match. And it's like, and they said like, dude, no, don't worry. It happened to me as well. So we talked around. We had a sort of a gathering, psychological sort of help, and they were like, it happens all the time because budgets get reassigned, and there were all companies that had different stages of gaming and publications, which is something also that it's making the business more complicated. You don't have one developer, one game. It's like, we are the guys who make this. No, we're the guys who make this catalog. And it's like 10 games. And so there's hidden projects you never even know about that don't see the light. And, maybe you've started scoring because it's such a long process, as you said. It's true that even the sound designer or the composer and stuff, you start working on it for like 3 years before the actual thought to be release time or release date. And then that actual release date either gets postponed or even canceled sometimes. That happens. So it makes it more complicated. Movies have more of a, I think if it's starting, to get, recorded and the actors are out and they're filming, chances are the machine is still gonna go, steam's gonna
the music comes in later in film and TV projects as well. So by the time you're being asked to make sounds for film and TV, the music's already being written, and there's usually not very much time to finish it.
It's a huge pro. So in sound packs and preset packs that you've made, is there one that you would say you're particularly proud of, or for example that you have like a fond memory or something fun?
That's a bit like asking me which of my daughters is my favorite.
Horrible question.
I suppose the one that I'm most proud of is a sound set for Zebra called Nordsund, because I'm a huge fan of all things Scandinavian. I've been for quite a while, and one of my favorite Scandinavian TV shows is a show called The Bridge. Also, that's Brun in Danish and Swedish. And I basically got talking with one of the composers on that show, who was already a customer of mine. And I think this is the one time where I've kind of basically approached the composer and say, I want to make some sounds for you. I probably just made a flippant remark in an email saying, hey, it'd be cool if I could do some sounds for the next series, because he was talking about the series 4 of it was coming up. And lo and behold, he thought that was a good idea too, and I ended up making a load of sounds for them to use on that soundtrack for that show. And it's been a very popular one, and it's a kind of sound that I really like. I'm a big fan of a lot of the soundtracks to Nordic noir shows. I love gritty detective shows.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Big fan. I'm watching a really, really good Norwegian one at the moment called Wisting, which is excellent. Yeah, so I ended up making them a collection of sounds, and then they were quite happy for me to release those sounds plus a load of other ones I hadn't sent to them, but I'd made in the same sound design sessions, and reference the fact that they were made for this show. And there was a very sort of Nordic noir
vibe
concept behind the sounds. So that's Nordsund, and I ended up making so many sounds. I released it in 2 volumes, one called Blood and one called Gold. Yeah, I think that's if I was forced at gunpoint to pick a favorite, that would be it.
Okay, fantastic. I'll be sure to check that out. That's true. Cool. So the last question I had, which it came up like, last but most interesting, was the time travel type of question. There has to be one. So if you were to time travel to somewhere in the past and meet yourself, what would you cryptically, because it has to be fun, you can't really spend an hour, telling yourself that, but it has to be also like some sort of time sensitive, manner device or something. So, but what would you try and tell yourself in the past about something that you've learned in the future, which you kind of wanted to know? I mean, there's plenty of things in one's life that you would wanted to know before, but in terms of sound design or in your in the scope of your work as a sound designer, what would you have wanted to know beforehand? And in this hypothetical time travel, you would tell yourself. Also, I had written like, where would you, in where in the time? So when, the where in time is usually referred to as when. When would you pop up and say like, yo, dude, you don't know me, but do this instead of that, for example?
I don't know. I think I'd probably want to try and persuade myself to get involved in music more deeply earlier on in my life, perhaps more in my 20s. But I think in a lot of ways I couldn't have started any earlier because of where I was sort of as a person mentally, and basically the point at which I fell into doing this professionally was such a sort of collection of perfect moments that I don't think it could have been done differently. It involved a point at which I realised I could make sounds for Omnisphere, because prior to that I'd been doing sound design for about a year before. I worked out that actually for Omnisphere you could make third-party sounds and it wasn't illegal, because there'd been a bit of confusion about that beforehand with people saying you couldn't. It was in their EU at LA that you weren't allowed to, but actually that was just about reusing the samples from Omnisphere. There was finding the love of my life and moving in with her and moving to London and basically quitting my job at Oxford University and just going for it, which I had to do at that point, and just seeing if it would work. And I think also who I was then, prior to that point, I hadn't been the sort of the right version of me to take advantage of all those other things coming together. So in some ways, I wouldn't want to have done it differently at all, because I also really enjoyed the sort of 10 or 12 years I spent trying to carve out a comedy career, because I did that with my best mate, and it was fantastic fun. It was disappointing it didn't come to anything, but it was a great time. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know what advice I would give to myself because
Yeah.
I could do it differently.
Well, there's wisdom in that.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes things just develop the way they are. Sometimes we all think about like, oh, I should have done this and that, but there's a theoretical level at which you're analyzing things, but things develop in a way that sometimes, yeah, when things are ready, they are ready, and there's a path to it, right? Like a journey to get to something later on, which looks like, oh, I should have done that earlier. You weren't, I would say, ready. I don't know. Just there's things click in a way, and that's why you do them. So
I think that's
right.
true. I think psychologically, I wasn't ready either to do it. The whole thing of calling myself the unfinished. I was someone that didn't finish things up until that point, and this is a job where you absolutely need to follow through and to stick with it and take it seriously. Although it also has to be a lot of fun, because if you didn't enjoy doing synth programming and you carried on doing it, you'd have to be insane.
Yeah.
You have to enjoy doing something like this to do it for a living. You can't just sort of casually go, oh, I think I'll try doing synth programming for a living. It's a bit like wanting to be a grave digger.
Yeah.
All of it's it's
That's
something
true.
you have to enjoy if you're going to keep doing it. I don't know where grave digger came from, but it worked. So I think the only advice maybe that I could have given myself would be to have got into music a bit earlier, and so that I would have had just a bit more knowledge about how things work as far as connecting up stuff in a studio, and maybe a little bit more industry knowledge from having met more people in the industry. That could have been useful.
Mm-hmm.
But I might at that point have still been too much of a dickhead to have taken advantage of any of it. So it might not have worked.
Yeah, that's also something that takes a little bit to realize. Like that sometimes there's also a level of hot uh, attitude from the 20s or stuff. I mean, you're in your 20s, so unless you're somehow contained in energy, usually there's a sort of like a huge burst in, and you want to do a lot of things and stuff. So it's natural that then things settle down, and when you look back at it, you think of yourself as the 30s attitude stuff, which is still sometimes hectic, but still more mature, and you're like, I should have done that 10 years ago, and you're like, then you realize I couldn't have, because I was just so different, and the perspective and times, and it's easy to look back at things. That's a usual cliche, but it's true. Like when you're there and you're just looking at yourself up ahead with just an ocean of possibilities, it's much harder. So you improvise, you go with what your guts tell you. You're still there's our 20 years old guts, so it's like you have to be a young guy.
We have poor instinct in our 20s.
Yeah. Which is the cause and the solution, to all the problems. But the poor instincts, absolutely, yeah. It's very easy to derail or to think like, this is what I have to do. And then parents telling you something which you by in theory and practice, you have to do the opposite of all the time. And then you're like, wait a second, no, maybe that's right. But there's no parent, I think, that is going to be probably telling you should make synth patches for a living and not leave that.
That's a really good life choice. Yeah.
Should be more parents like, when are you gonna stop doing low school and stuff, and you're gonna start applying yourself to something serious like sound design? I was like, all right, Dad, I'm gonna do it. Don't worry. I was like, about time, you learn.
Well, it's true. I mean, I'm 44 now, and still, whenever I speak to my dad, he says, Have you got any work at the moment? He's terrified that I won't have it.
I guarantee you it's all the same. So you're now in London, right? You were born in the UK, I think?
I was born in a little place called Leamington Spa, which I doubt you'll have heard of. I'm actually living in Oxford now.
In Oxford, okay. But, come from Italy, so very different heritage and people and stuff. I moved to the US, so it's got a half family somewhere, half family other way. But it's everywhere the same. Like, and I have, I'm sure you have friends and colleagues and other family members, and I do, and the story is all the same. Like,
Oh
there's,
yeah, yeah,
I'm 39 now, and and parents are like, but what are you gonna do about this and that? It's like that's work. It's like, yeah, but what about, and they start realizing that that's where you are, but it just times have moved so much forward in so little
yeah.
time. Then when you're in your 20s, you're
Music.
always criticizing them now, but then you realize, well, it's kind of impossible to get time. I don't have kids, but probably you can see the same with your daughters and stuff. Like, they're
Yeah,
fast. Things are super
yeah.
fast, and
I mean, they're
sometimes.
2 and 4, so I haven't asked them what they want to do
Okay,
for a living
okay,
yet. But
okay, okay. I have friends that have them a little bit older, and like, you can't catch up. So they kind of understand better. I'm doing it without kids just to understand my parents, and parenthood. But it's typical. Things have been so fast for them, it's like any work you found that you like. I have one. I do one. It's also taking a lot of time in my day, but there you can feel that constant. Yeah,
yeah.
but what about? So it's typical. It's everywhere in the world. It's one thing
And of
unites.
course, my job sounds ridiculous to my parents, so they're obviously extra concerned.
Yeah.
It's only when I sort of if I tell them I'm working on something that they've heard of that's on TV or is a film that they've heard of, then they relax.
Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, but when I do something like that, they ask like, "Well, are you going like in the movie or something like that?" You actually look for some kind of massive, physical, undeniable, titanic involvement. Like something
Yeah,
like, "Yes, I'm gonna be on the cover page of the movie," and it says like sound design by this guy. That it's never gonna happen. Like there's a scale of things. Probably the starring character is gonna be on cover page. It's like, yeah, but
well,
if you asked, have you asked them? It's like, no. It's the same thing with music composed everywhere. Yeah.
well, yeah. When the reality is you're wondering whether you'll even get credit on the film. So the idea that you actually stroll down the red carpet with the flash bulbs of the photography going off is
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
little
Yeah,
unrealistic.
yeah, a little unrealistic, but comes from the love of the parents. So gotta,
Yes.
you start when you get older, you realize, well, blinded by love. That's the thing. You can't put them into a rational train of thought. Just never gonna happen. So no matter how rational they think they can be in their suggestions and guides, it's just love. So, all right. So it's the end of it. So people, just let's remind people there's a sound pack called Humankind.
Humankind, yes. Well, it's a collection of 12 sound sets, so you will be able to buy them all in one collection if you want to, if you're that excitable. But essentially, it'll be 12 individual sound sets. There's 64 patches in each one, and pick the ones you like the sound of, or the ones that you've actually got the synth for. Don't buy them if you haven't got the
Yeah,
synth.
because that's gonna be dangerous. Yeah, especially if you're this, because then you have to get the synth. Because they're also very good synths. So there's no waste in
Yeah.
that. But yeah, you won't
Well,
be
it's.
able.
I mean, most of them are my favourite synths. So
Awesome, awesome. It's also very cool to know that it's again a very heartfelt thing because it's since no matter how virtual they are that you have a connection with, and it, as you said, it helps. Liking them helps making it fun. It helps you can't just, well, this is now popular, I'll do that because it's popular. No, if you have a
I,
connection with the synthesis, it just
yeah, I think that's one good piece of advice to give to anyone who's looking to get into synth programming is don't do what is popular. Do what you like because it's going to be a long slog. And if you do things that just because they're popular, and if you then don't have success, then you're going to put all the blame for your lack of success on yourself. And that's not always going to be the case. Make sounds that you enjoy and that you want to use. And I do think one of the things that has worked for me is that I am also a composer. So I make sounds that I will use in my music. Um, and I think having an understanding of how sounds are used is important when designing them because quite often a new synth will get released with a bunch of presets in it that sound spectacular but are utterly unusable in a writing environment. There's no way you could put it into a queue without it completely and utterly dominating that piece of music and making it sound like you've just dumped something weird in there for no apparent reason. But yeah, doing sounds, making sounds that you would use and the sort of things that appeal to you works. And enough people come along that agree with you on what sounds good that they will be interested in what you're doing. And I think it comes across. It's a question of integrity as much as anything. Do what you love, and people will turn up and love it as well. Don't go chasing after whatever the most current trends are, because you'll get very sick of it very quickly.
Nice. That's wise words. That's good. It applies not only to sound design. There's a tendency in social media and stuff to just go where the spotlight is pointing at. And by the time you're there, your energy is consumed. A lot of people are there for very trivial reasons as well. So whoever is around you is not probably the most inspiring person, because they look at you like, I'm just here because the spotlight is here, and you're all looking at yourself. And the other guy in the darkness is really enjoying what he's doing. It's probably going to make the spotlight sooner or later either move in that other direction or whatever, maybe go somewhere else again. And there's just not a lot of reasons to. So it helps in sound design, but helps in everywhere else. Don't chase the what's popular, because it's like, they do it for streaming, they do it for video games, they do it for whatever. Like, if it's the thing now, do that. And you chase this thing and you leave yourself out of the question all the time. Just make something your thing, and people, as you said, will come out and listen to it, and then one thing takes into another, and it's how it works, while you're still enjoying it. Because if you don't enjoy stuff, time flies. I don't know if you agree with that, and it doesn't come back. The hypothetical question of going back to time, it just doesn't happen. So make the best and the most out of it, because that's what matters.
Yeah, it's also worth noting that anything that does become popular at some point was that guy just doing or that girl doing what they loved to please themselves, and it just picked up and got carried.
Yeah.
And they will have done the best out of it. And anybody turning up later on will at some point get trashed, because they'll have done a really sort of plastic version of what was once someone's absolute passion.
Yeah, absolutely true. All right. Thank you very much, Matt, for being here. That was fantastic.
My pleasure.
Fantastic. And I'm happy that I can kind of, get to know you after being playing this sound. I kind of, the hidden thing was like, I want to meet this guy. I want to ask him these questions. So that's, again, I didn't go with what's popular, although, I mean, your sounds are popular, but I was like, I have to put a face and a voice and, an idea, and ask this guy, like, how, things are. Because
not that you can see much of my face at the moment, because
that's fine. It's fine. And you've got lovely scenes in the background and stuff, so don't worry about that. So thank you very much. And that's it. There's nothing else to do. Go on Matt's website. You can see the link down below here, and help people in these proving times, but also get yourself some amazing sound packs, because the sounds are rocking. So, and you'll be happy that now you know about these sound packs, because especially if you already have the synths, as you said, don't buy it if you don't have the synths. Well, buy the synth because it's great, and then get the sound pack. But any synth you have and you think if you try Matt Sounds, you'll be back at like, I gotta go back at square one and studying sound design. And there's a lot of beautiful stuff, which is also very inspiring for making music. So it's like, I like that it's a domino effect. You're like bringing the inspiration back to the other guy who composes, the other guy whose music goes to a video game, maybe gets inspired by a different scene or character or whatever. And it's an endless train of good vibes, which is what in the end music and art should be, right? So
absolutely,
very, very good. Right. Thank you very much again, Matt. Take care.
No worries. Lovely speaking to you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.